Cesar is originally from near Chicago, and he graduated from the University of Illinois College of Engineering. He's worked in many people-based tech roles, and he's achieved his dream job at Microsoft by age 25. Today, he's program manager too, as well as a life success coach, and he's focusing on mindset, purpose, career alignment, and both professional and personal development. So you can find him on most social media platforms. His handle is No Fluff Mindset, and amongst other things, Cesar's always been driven by untapped potential and looks forward to helping you achieve your dreams as well. I'm glad to have you on the show today, Cesar.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thank you for the invite. I'm so honored to be here.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, so the first question I'd love to ask you, this is kind of my favorite thing to ask. I ask a lot of successful folks, but tell me about the specific moments that set you on the path you're on right now.
Yeah, definitely. So it's definitely been a handful along the way. One of the first ones that I can remember is being a kid in second grade. And luckily I was in some Zenith accelerated classes. And I remember making a PowerPoint in second grade and thinking, man, this thing is so cool. Like, what if I got to work on something that, like, when I made a change, like the whole world got to see, right? That was like my most simplistic idea of, working on tech or doing something bigger, impacting the world. And then I also remember during parent teacher conferences, teachers always saying, we wish we had like 20, 30 Cesars. I was a pretty good kid. And so that actually was kind of a theme that I've kept with me. What if there was 100 of me, a million of me, would the world be better? Then going through college, that was definitely a tough time. The engineering curriculum was no joke. I didn't know better, so I didn't have coding experience going in, but I studied computer science. So that was really, really tough. But along the way, I found my way. And most recently, after getting some internships and working different jobs, making my way to Microsoft, I was on the bus on the way to work at a job that I like. I liked my software engineering role at Microsoft, but I was listening to personal development podcasts as I usually do. And this particular podcast was about finding your purpose and going through your ikigai, really trying to find what is your life purpose, what is the thing that you're supposed to be doing. And I found myself gravitating towards all of these other things that I do, which is also, coaching basketball and mentoring students. And I was gravitating towards those things and away from my current tech role. And I found that really interesting. So I started digging deeper and deeper and eventually found my way over to what I'm doing now, which is mindset and life coaching. It's kind of a variation of what I've been doing for, call it, a decade. But now that path is so clear to me that we're going, 100 miles an hour, and I love it.
Cool. That's awesome. And are you still working with Microsoft now too, or are you just doing the coaching and personal development stuff?
Yep. Sure am. I'm actually on a new team as of June, and I absolutely love my team. I love the new role. My whole role is to essentially build an engaged group of customers and partners and keep them engaged so they give us feedback. And these people-based roles is one of the things that I found clarity on, that I was searching for, something that aligned even better with what my skills and passions were. And so that's been going super greatly. And so everything else is, you could call it, on the side.
That's awesome. Well, it's cool to be able to chase your passion like that, especially with, I've done the same thing. I had different businesses that did very well. We're going just really not fulfilled. You'd be making 6 figures a month and not really love what you're doing. So
Right.
I love that you at a young age have decided to keep pursuing other passions while you're still doing the Microsoft engineering job. And that's a pretty cool thing. What is your personal definition of success?
So the key thing when it comes to success that I always remind people of is that it's different for every single person. Some of us, they can be pretty similar, and that's great when you find some others with similar definitions. For me, what it boils down to is waking up excited every single day and going to sleep fulfilled every single night, right? So what happens in between and what you do leading up to that and what you have to look forward to is what makes you successful, being in that position. And if you're not there, that's totally okay. But knowing that you're in the pursuit of that, for me, especially, going through a tough college curriculum, or even as I knew that I wanted to switch roles as far as my career went, I was looking forward to that day, looking forward to taking the next step towards finding what that was for me. And so if putting it in the most simple terms, that's what I define it as.
Cool. That's awesome. Have you got to get in any big speaking engagements or, speaking roles where you're doing, keynote speeches or anything like that yet? Or is that on the horizon here?
Yeah, a little of both. So I've always done different types of public speaking. I was always very involved in what was called SHIP, the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. So even since the college days, I was giving different kinds of talks to different groups of students. We started different programs. So anywhere from, first graders to their parents and entire communities, letting them know the benefits of college to, once I got into the professional world, reaching back and helping the still students understand what they need to do to succeed in the professional world and what they can do now to get there. And now it's a matter of more so on the mindset and the life side, really finding those deep sources of motivation to do whatever it is that you want to do, right? And now it's looking a little bit more towards that, and especially with the pandemic going on, a lot more folks need a lot more mindset types of talks. So I've been giving a lot of those to different universities and different groups of people, as needed.
Cool, that's a blast. That'll be a big thing when you've got all those different, whether it's podcast episodes or radio interviews or TV, blog interviews, all those things. Be a whole lot easier to get featured on the Google Knowledge Panel and those kind of things there. So,
Yeah,
definitely
absolutely.
on the right path, man.
And one thing I remind folks of is, I had never posted a single selfie in my entire life. I never made a single Instagram post in my entire life up until, coming up on 3 months ago now. And things just have absolutely taken off. And what I remind people of is it's not magic. I'm no superstar. It's just that I found clarity and what my purpose is. And I align my life with what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's why things are falling into place so easily. So that's what I encourage others to find too.
Cool, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great advice. And then, what's your advice for someone who isn't feeling fulfilled or that knows they're just not truly reaching their potential?
Definitely. I tell them to dig. I always believe that every single person has, the potential inside of them, but they have the answers inside of them too. And a lot of times what goes on in our daily lives, we're just constantly distracted by the things that we need to do, our current jobs or our different commitments to our family and our friends and our hobbies. And only once in a while, or only when we put intention into it, do we actually slow down enough to really dig deep inside ourselves and ask, are we aligned right now? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing right now? And a lot of times the answer is no, and that can be stressful. And that's actually a reason that other folks choose not to do that as well. Not only because they don't realize they don't have the time to do it, but when they do, it feels uncomfortable to know that you're not in the right position, right?
Yeah.
And so I always remind folks to dig. There's a lot of different techniques that you can do. I put out different types of videos of types of questions you can start asking yourself to get those answers. And then once you find the answers, dig into, well, why is that? Where did I get that idea from? Who taught me that was right or wrong? And keep digging down all the way to the root. And, if tears start to come out, that's how you really found something. And once you find that foundation and you build so much clarity around who you are and what you're supposed to be, then that's when you start to align your life with all of that. But you have to progress inward before you can progress forward.
Well, that's awesome. And one of the things on that is just taking the time to study and listen to podcasts and listen to audiobooks and, tune into watching stuff like what we're doing right now, just connecting and learning from leaders that, that's one of the biggest things that I've done with, definitely didn't have all the answers. And I've built a couple dozen different companies. Typically I start out not knowing anything about the business that I end up running. But again, just reading and studying and be able to, like you said, keep digging for the answer. We've got, at this time in history here, we've got the sum of all human knowledge in our pocket on a cell phone there. So, you're probably on the front end of kind of helping people get that information. So it's a pretty cool thing there.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, not to cut you off. That's exactly right. So putting yourself also in situations where these things can happen, right? So interacting with people like you and finding communities like yours and listening to those different kinds of interviews and these people who are in the positions that you want to be in or make you think about the things that you haven't thought about before, right? When you set up your environment in this way, it's no longer luck, or you build your own luck, right? When you set things up this way, they're bound to happen. And so if you take the steps to set it up in the way that will result in the things that you want, you're going to get those results.
I love your quote. You said you build your own luck. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that one.
What character traits do you value the most, whether it's in yourself or others?
Yeah, well, I think both go together. I think we should all, try to embody the things that we want to see in the world and also in others. So I am always about authenticity and transparency and honesty and integrity, that those things always, always, always win. So even when, giving different kinds of talks to different groups of people, I always remind folks, there are different versions of yourself. There's a more professional version, and there's a more laid back version, and there's a more proper version. But at the same time, you have to remember to always be yourself, right? Because the way that you connect with people is when that barrier is low. And what I mean by barrier is, naturally, we as humans, our brains are accustomed to try to see whether we can trust other humans or not, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of when you have that BS factor. You can tell if someone's being fake or in some way, shape, or form not being the most authentic version of themselves. And on the flip side of that, you can tell when someone is just being 100% themselves, and you can feel their energy, and what they're saying is the truest version of what they believe to be true. And so that's why my whole thing is no fluff, is I remind folks, the way I'm talking to you right now is the way that I would talk to you if we were out for a beer, for a coffee, or for dinner, or whatever it may be. I'm just telling you what I know, and I'm telling you the way that it is. And so I think those traits are going to take you a lot further than you trying to find the perfect, word lineup, or trying to find, seem the most professional, or all of those things. They're important to a certain extent, but I think the most important things are just being that authentic version of you and just telling it the way that it is. I think that goes a long way.
Cool. That's great, Cesar. And then how have you pushed through your toughest times?
So that kind of ties back to what we were saying about digging into yourself. Specifically, also finding clarity on why it is that you're doing what you're doing. What's your why? What is your purpose? So some of my toughest times definitely came along the way during the college days. And I keep referring to that because, my second year of college in the engineering curriculum, it was all-nighters week after week after week. I couldn't go home to see family because I needed my weekends to do work. And it was tough. I would show up to office hours a couple hours early just to get a seat. I would sit in the same 2-hour discussion 2, 3, 4 times in a row because I didn't understand it yet. So it was tough. But what I would do, if say it was 3, 4 in the morning in an empty computer lab and it's just me and I'm struggling, I would think about, well, why am I doing this in the first place?
Yeah.
Right? What are my sources of motivation? And so for me, that was all of the sacrifices that my parents and my entire family made. They have the standard immigrant story from Mexico. They grew up poor in a huge family, and they moved to Chicago, and they put their heads down and they worked super hard so that we could have this opportunity, right? So that I can be in this classroom in the first place. And on top of that, I knew I had, little cousins looking up to me. I knew I had my parents, wanting me to achieve so much. And when I thought of those things, there's nothing that could stop me. There's no reason that, being a little tired doesn't trump, my dad not knowing English when he went to college, right? Yeah. So I'd ask myself, what is a little extra sleep, or what's pushing for one more hour? What is it in comparison to what my why is? And so when you find what your why is, and it's that powerful, you're going to finish what you start.
Cool. I love that. Yeah, that's a great thing that a lot of, motivational or inspirational speakers don't cover is, you get done, you go to pay for their seminar, and you're there and they're so hyped up, and, got the music going and the lights flashing, and, everybody is so hyped up and doesn't really know why. And then you leave, you go back home, and you're like, not really sure. Yeah, I felt real good at that seminar. Maybe I just need to pay for another seminar. But I love what you talked about there with figuring out what your why is and chasing that, because then the details fall into place easy. So.
Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that I remind people of too, is, motivation is one small part of it, but motivation without action, those are just nice thoughts. Those are just good feelings, but they don't actually get you the results that you want. Right. So yeah. I want folks to be motivated. I want them to hear my story and understand that they can do things too. But I also want them to understand that they have to build their own foundation, which doesn't leave, because willpower, as much as we want to think that our willpower is the most powerful thing in the world, and it is in short spurts, it doesn't last, right? So you need something else. You need that everlasting source of what's going to push you to the next level. And that's where your why comes into play.
Cool, man. I love that. And what inspires you?
What inspires me most is seeing people who are doing what I hope to do and hope to be in the future, right? In the next 5, 10 years. So you look at some great motivational speakers and everything. I don't necessarily look at their success, but I look at what they're doing for the world and how much they impact others, right? And I understand that, if I put in the work, I can do that too. One thing that I always remind folks of is not to idolize people, look up to people, be inspired by them, want to be like them more, but also understand that they're just humans, right? There's a few edge cases. There's some geniuses out there. There's some well-oiled machine, God-given athletes in this world. But for the most part, people that are very successful are just the people that understood the way that these processes work. They understood that their actions are what create the results. Yeah. And they went and they took those actions, right? And it wasn't easy. It was a lot of hard work, but it was targeted work and it was consistent work. And that's what got them the results. So when I see people like, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I love the way that he is, or, Rob Dial or Tony Robbins out there, changing lives, or people like you, interviewing so many successful people, I realize that you just had the determination and you just found the clarity and you just took step after step after step after step to get what you wanted. Yeah. And this is the results of that, right? So that's what inspires me. I understand that as I keep taking these steps, I'll get the results too.
That's another great thing to mention there. A lot of times I get on, people are, maybe it's their first or second time on a podcast. They're super nervous and they've seen episodes where everything is all edited out, but they don't realize that I survived brain cancer, lost the ability to speak, so when you're seeing this video, like right now we're live streaming, but if somebody's watching this on the website and going, man, I don't know how that guy always knows exactly what to say. I don't, I miss what I'm saying. Sometimes I'll ask the same question twice and then that gets all edited in post. So
yeah, exactly right. And to touch on that really quickly, like stories like yours too, surviving brain cancer and taking such a huge pivot, right, from bodybuilding into a completely different space where you can no longer do that thing. It kind of makes me ask myself, well, what's my excuse? And I can't think of one better. So I better put in that work.
Yep. Yeah, it's all about the work, all about the work and what you're doing. If you're going to a 9 to 5 job all day there and then wondering why you're not driving the Ferrari, it's like, well, that's because you're not doing anything outside of what that, the minimum requirements that job is. So,
right. Exactly right. And that's one big question. We might be touching on this later, but one big question folks that keep asking me now is, how do you handle all of it? And I just remind them, that's how I spend my free time. I don't spend my free time, scrolling through infinite anything. I don't spend my free time binging anything for 5, 6, 7 hours. I'll take the time to relax and recharge. I'll exercise, I'll watch one show before bed, but the rest of that time, I put in work, I get the results by putting in the work. So that's what I do with my time. And, some folks seem, surprised by that. And I remind them, don't be surprised. You can do this too. You just need, some perspective shifts.
If you keep doing what you're doing right now, as far as dedicating that time and spending your free time working on self-improvement rather than just kicking back and doing the Netflix and eating a box of donuts, you'll have a lot of times in the future here. Maybe you've already had this. I'm not sure what your financial situation is, but it's always funny when the people, you get, old high school acquaintances or, somebody you used to work with or whatever that sees the financial situation you're in the future here. And they go, well, it must be nice. Or, it's like, I wish I owned, multiple, whatever it is. Things are kind of a funny thing when you're going, you would not have traded the last 5 years of work that I did to end up in the situation I'm in today. That's kind of a good thing you pointed out there. Can you share what steps you take daily to improve?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, similar to the last answer, I fill in all of my time and I set up all of my actions around constantly improving, right? That's the way that I started spending my money once I started making money. The only things that I splurge on are like gym clothes, because I know that they will make me exercise more, which will take care of my mind and my body, which will make me more productive, which will, if you think about it way down the chain, maybe you'll get a promotion, maybe you'll get a higher bonus, maybe you'll get a higher paying job. So that's what I spend my money on, right? Is, workout clothes or better foods or, different kinds of coaching and classes so that I can constantly be the best version of myself, because it's an investment, right? Absolutely, it always comes back to you. And it's not only money, something I remind, I work with a lot of students. It's your time, money, and energy, right? So you can spend your money, but you can also spend your time. If you're folding laundry, are you listening to music, or are you listening to different personal development and self-help podcasts? Or are you, the videos that you're watching, are you just scrolling through YouTube, or are you watching, interviews with people like you and becoming better as you watch something? You know, what is actually going into your mind and into your body this whole time? And then, like I said, also your energy. You know, what are you spending your brain cycles on? Are you constantly, do you have friends who you're constantly talking about this and that very simple friend drama? Or do you have friends that you talk to about, you know, these higher purposes and what their motivations are, and their side hustles, and what they're doing to become stronger, become healthier? You know, what are you spending your time, your money, and your energy on? And I try to focus all of those things on being the best version of myself.
I love that. I've talked about that a lot in the past, even in some of my books, where the talking about not only, maybe you're in a, if you grew up in the ghetto, got no money, your parents are extremely poverty stricken, and the people that you're naturally surrounded by are other people in that same financial class. You're gonna have a real hard time learning how to become successful. But if you start, you can surround your, rather than being out hanging out with the other folks there, if you're listening to the same information, podcasts, motivational videos, whatever, you can be learning from basically virtually surrounding yourself with very successful people. And that was what I did. I didn't come from money, but spent hours and hours every day, reading 6 books a month, minimum there, and so basically virtually surrounded myself with very successful people, and ended up that's who's in my life now, because as you're listening to them all the time, and pretty soon you start commenting on Instagram posts or the next Facebook post or whatever, and that's how me and you got connected. I was seeing, I think it was on your Instagram, just seeing all these great things, and like, man, I would love to have you on the show. So end up with just whoever you're choosing to surround yourself with, even if you don't know them. That can change your life a lot, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love to touch on that too, because a lot of, besides spending all of my time, money, energy on myself, the only other way I spend it is giving back and helping others realize the same, right? Because as you said, some people have different environments, they have different upbringings, or they're in different situations where they're not constantly surrounded by these kinds of influences. And what they are influenced by, isn't good. Especially growing up near Chicago, my entire family is on the Southwest side, which is, not a good part to be around. And, just a very common mentality, even throughout my family, you can tell in the older aunts and uncles, is, you put your head down and you work, you graduate high school, you find a job, wherever it may be, and you put your head down and work, and you stay there, and that's about it. Right. And
Yep.
so, and the thing is, it's nothing, coming out of a place of, not negativity, but it's simple ignorance, in a way that it just comes from not knowing. It comes from, your culture. It comes from your family. It comes from these other influences. It's nothing that you did wrong, right? There's so
Exactly,
many
yeah.
that will, be put into the same historical cycles, because they just don't have the influences, and it's no more their fault than mine. And the flipping that on the other way around, I did no more work to get to go to the elementary, middle school, and high school that I did, that set me up for the college that I went to, that set me up for this and for that. So I could have been in the exact same shoes. A lot of my family members are in the exact same shoes. A lot of the schools around mine were in the exact same shoes. And so that's why, a huge part of what I do is not only, helping folks just reach their next level from 9 to 10, but also from 2, 3, 4. I try to remind them, hey, like it doesn't have to stay that way.
Yeah.
And it's on you to change it.
Well, and that's a big thing. How a lot of times they say people with money generate more money, or the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and that's a whole lot less to do with the actual financial situation that you're in than it does with the knowledge that, for example, gaining your first 1,000 followers on Instagram, like as you're building this massive following, is extremely difficult. But once you start figuring it out, it's easier to get from 1 to 10,000 than it is to get from 0 to 1,000. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that mindset's a huge thing. And then how do you manage and prioritize opportunities?
So one of my favorite frameworks that I usually share with my clients is, there's the concept of the rocks, pebbles, and sand. And so a lot of folks know, you take a jar and you have a lot of sand, and you have a lot of pebbles, and you have a lot of rocks. If you put the sand in first and then you pile the pebbles on top, there's no way the big rocks are going to fit, right?
Yeah.
Put the big rocks first, then you put the pebbles fill in the cracks. Then you put in the sand fill in the rest of the cracks, and then it all fits, right? So the same works with your time. And so what I always recommend folks do is I always do weekly planning. And at first I put in my big rocks. Those are the things that are important and can't move. So things like, more or less 9 to 5 for my job, that I have to dedicate time to that. That's not going to move. And if I know that I have, weekly calls with my family. So I put those in, I know I'm going to prioritize those, and, whatever other weekly calls that I have, those are there. Then my pebbles are the ones that are important, but flexible, or not as important, but they have to have a certain time, right? And then I start filling in those gaps. And then finally is the sand. Those are the things that are the least important. They still matter and are the most flexible. So things like, doing your chores like laundry or errands or things like that, those can fill in the cracks then after you have all of your big rocks and pebbles in. And that way you make sure that the most important things always get done.
Cool. That's awesome. And then do you keep a whiteboard on the wall or a notebook, or how do you typically schedule your time?
Yep. So I have a notebook planner that I use for my proactive planning. And then I also use Google Calendar to constantly stay up to date and never miss something. If I'm out with friends and they want to hang out on this day, I'll quickly add it in. And then I refer to both as I'm planning out my entire week.
Cool. That's awesome. I do the same thing there. So what advice, how old are you all right now? How old are you right now? Sorry about that.
I am 28 now.
28. Okay. So if you could go back 10 years, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
So it's funny, this question actually came up. I was giving another talk to my alma mater, the University of Illinois, and they asked me the same question, what advice do you have for, your college years self? And it was actually the same thing that I told myself at the time, which was, it's going to be worth it. Right? It's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it. And that's why I remind folks pretty much in any state that they're in, if they're just starting their grind, whatever it may be, if that bigger picture is clear to you and you know why you're doing all of this hard work, and you remind yourself it's going to be worth it, then you just keep grinding. Or even now, right? I am in a great position, but for some reason I'm still doing all of this work outside of work so that I can achieve something else, right? And so the reason that I tell myself it's going to be worth it is because I know what it is, and it is literally changing the world. It's literally changing people's lives, and it's having that huge impact on the world that I've always dreamed of having. And it's not only about me, like I said, it's about others, it's about family, it's about, the next generation seeing what you can do and reminding them always that I'm just a normal person, but this is how I decide to spend my time. And that's why I get the results that I get. And so that's what I remind myself of. It's going to be worth it.
That's awesome. And the best way to get a hold of you, again, this is Cesar V. Martinez. Best way to get a hold of you is that socialtap.com/no fluff mindset.
Yep, exactly right. Or just go directly to Instagram or Facebook, No Fluff Mindset. I should be the first thing that pops up. I haven't found any imitators just yet. But yeah, find me whichever way is easier for you. I'm most active right now on Instagram and Facebook just because the messenger is right on my phone. But any way you can reach out, I'm happy to chat with anyone.
Perfect. Sounds good. So I'll drop a link in your podcast notes here. So far, I've got the website, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook page, and your YouTube channel. And we'll go ahead and upload all that once the show is over here. And should be a good thing for folks to connect with you. I sure appreciate you being on today. That was a great little chat.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, the pleasure's all mine. I got to see your community and your interviews, and I'm happy to be a part of this.
Cool. Thanks, Cesar. I'll stop streaming right now. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.